The silence in Michael's living room had a weight to it, pressing down on his shoulders like an invisible hand. Outside, rain tapped against the windows in an uneven rhythm, nature's own heartbeat contrasting with the stillness within. He sat in his worn leather armchair, the one Rebecca had insisted they buy despite its outrageous price tag. "It'll age with us," she'd said. Now the chair had outlived her. Michael's fingers curled around a coffee mug long gone cold. From his position, he could see into Emma's room through the half-open door. His 6-year-old daughter slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling beneath her favorite unicorn blanket. Her face in slumber was so much like Rebecca's that sometimes it physically hurt to look at her. Tonight was one of those nights. The knock came at 9:17 p.m. 3 gentle raps that somehow managed to shatter the silence like gunshots. Michael's body tensed, coffee sloshing over the rim of his mug onto his hand. He wasn't expecting anyone. He never did anymore. Setting down the mug, he moved to the door with the reluctance of a man approaching his own execution. Force of habit made him look through the peephole, and what he saw sent his heart into a violent drumroll against his ribs. His hands began to tremble as if the temperature had suddenly dropped 20 degrees. It was her. Again. Sophia Vasquez, 3B, the new tenant who had moved in 3 weeks ago. The woman who, through some cosmic cruelty, wore his dead wife's face like she had borrowed it from a celestial costume department. Michael pressed his forehead against the door, eyes squeezed shut, willing her to go away. But the knock came again, more insistent this time. "Michael? I know you're home. I can see the light under your door." Her voice wasn't Rebecca's. That was the one mercy in this whole twisted situation. Where Rebecca's voice had been melodic, almost musical, Sophia's was slightly deeper, with the faintest hint of an accent he couldn't place. It was the only thing that kept him tethered to reality when he saw her. With a deep breath that did nothing to steady him, Michael opened the door, careful to leave the chain on. Through the narrow gap, he could see her standing in the hallway, a bottle of wine in one hand. "Hi," she said, offering a smile that made his stomach lurch. It was Rebecca's smile, the way the right side lifted slightly higher than the left, creating that endearing asymmetry he had fallen in love with 15 years ago. "It's late," he managed, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. Sophia's smile faltered. "It's barely past 9. I thought, maybe we could have a glass of wine. As neighbors? I hardly know anyone in the building yet." Michael's eyes fixed on the way she tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, the exact same gesture Rebecca would make when she was nervous or uncertain. The same graceful flick of the wrist, the same slight tilt of the head afterward. "I can't," he said, the words coming out harsher than intended. "Emma's asleep." "Another time." He closed the door before she could respond, then leaned against it, sliding down until he sat on the floor, knees drawn to his chest like a child hiding from monsters. Except the monster wasn't Sophia. It was the grief that roared back to life every time he saw her face. 3 years earlier. "You're staring again," Rebecca said, not looking up from her book. They were in bed, the soft glow of her reading lamp casting golden shadows across her face. "Can you blame me?" Michael replied, propping himself up on one elbow. "I hit the genetic lottery when I married you." Rebecca lowered her book, fixing him with a mock-stern look that dissolved into laughter. "You're impossible. Impossibly in love with you, he countered, leaning in to kiss her. She met him halfway, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. When they pulled apart, she kept her hand there, thumb tracing the line of his jaw. Promise me something? Anything. If something ever happens to me. Rebecca, don't. No, listen, she insisted, her expression serious now. If something happens to me, promise you won't shut yourself away from the world. Emma will need you to be whole. Michael frowned. Where is this coming from? Rebecca shrugged, her eyes dropping to the book in her lap. Just a feeling. Promise me, Michael. I promise, he said, not meaning it, because in that moment, the idea of a world without Rebecca in it seemed as impossible as living without oxygen. 3 weeks later, a drunk driver ran a red light, and Rebecca was gone. The first time Michael saw Sophia was at the mailboxes in the lobby. He'd been sorting through bills when he heard the click of heels on tile. Looking up, he'd seen Rebecca walking toward him, and for one wild, heart-stopping moment, he believed in miracles. Then she'd smiled and said, "Hi, I'm Sophia. Just moved in," and reality came crashing back with such force that he'd had to grip the edge of the mailbox to stay upright. Michael, he'd managed to choke out, before mumbling something about being late and practically running for the elevator. Since then, he'd become an expert at avoidance. Taking the stairs when he heard the elevator running. Checking the peephole before leaving his apartment. Timing his laundry runs for odd hours. But in a building with only 12 units, complete avoidance was impossible. Like tonight. Michael pushed himself up from the floor, legs stiff from sitting in one position too long. He moved to Emma's room, standing in the doorway to watch her sleep. Her dark hair was splayed across the pillow, one small hand curled near her face. Rebecca's daughter in every way, from her determined chin to her infectious laugh. "Daddy?" Emma's voice, thick with sleep, pulled him from his thoughts. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. "Did I wake you?" She shook her head, rubbing at her eyes. "I had a dream about Mommy." Michael's throat tightened. "Yeah? Was it a good dream?" Emma nodded. "She was pushing me on the swings at the park. The really high ones." She paused, her small face scrunching in thought. "Daddy, is the lady next door Mommy's sister?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "No, honey." "Why would you think that?" "Because she looks like Mommy in the pictures. I saw her when she brought cookies." "You were in the bathroom." Michael vaguely remembered Sophia knocking one afternoon when he'd just stepped into the shower. He'd assumed she'd given up and left when he didn't answer. "She's not related to Mommy," he said carefully. "Sometimes people just look similar." Emma seemed to consider this. "She has a nice smile. Like Mommy's." "Go back to sleep, Em," Michael said, tucking the blanket around her. "School tomorrow." As he turned off her night light, Emma's voice floated through the darkness. "I like her, Daddy. She doesn't make me sad like the pictures do." Michael stood frozen in the doorway, her words echoing in his mind. Out of the mouth of babes, Rebecca would have said. Grief is a silent shadow. Have you ever seen someone who reminded you of a person you lost? Tell us your experience in the comments below. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Michael's mood perfectly. He moved through the apartment on autopilot, making Emma's breakfast, packing her lunch, helping her pick out clothes that matched. The routine was his lifeline, the only thing keeping him functioning some days. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" Emma asked as she spooned cereal into her mouth. "It's not the weekend," Michael replied, pouring himself a third cup of coffee. "But tomorrow's my half day. We could have pancakes for lunch." Michael paused, mentally checking his calendar. Friday. Half day at Emma's school. He'd completely forgotten. "Sure," he said, forcing a smile. "Pancakes for lunch it is." Emma beamed, milk dribbling down her chin. "With chocolate chips? Is there any other kind?" Her laughter, so like Rebecca's, filled the kitchen. For a moment, the apartment felt less empty. After dropping Emma at school, Michael headed to his home office. As a freelance graphic designer, he had the luxury of working from home, a blessing after Rebecca died, allowing him to be there for Emma. But it also meant days of isolation, with only his thoughts and memories for company. He was deep into a project when a knock at the door startled him. Glancing at the clock, he saw it was nearly noon. Probably a package delivery. But when he looked through the peephole, Sophia stood there, shifting from foot to foot. Michael considered pretending he wasn't home, but something about her posture, a certain tension in her shoulders, made him hesitate. With a resigned sigh, he opened the door. "Hi," Sophia said, her expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. "I need to talk to you." Before he could respond, she continued, "And please don't say you're busy or that it's not a good time. I've tried to be patient and understanding, but this is getting ridiculous." Michael blinked, taken aback by her directness. "What is this?" She gestured between them. "The way you literally run in the opposite direction when you see me coming. The way you pretend not to hear me when I say hello in the hallway. The way you look at me like I'm some kind of ghost." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with accusation and hurt. Michael's first instinct was to deny it, to make excuses, but the truth was written all over her face, Rebecca's face. "Why do you avoid me like I'm a ghost?" Sophia asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Michael's defenses crumbled. The weight of 3 years of grief pressed down on him, squeezing the air from his lungs. When he finally spoke, the words felt torn from somewhere deep inside him. "Because you wear her face," he said, his voice breaking. "And it still breaks me." Sophia's expression shifted from frustration to confusion. "What?" Michael stepped back, gesturing for her to come in. It was time to stop running. In the living room, Sophia perched on the edge of the sofa while Michael remained standing, unable to sit still with the nervous energy coursing through him. "My wife, Rebecca," he began, moving to the bookshelf where a framed photo stood. He handed it to Sophia. "She died 3 years ago." Sophia looked down at the photograph, Rebecca laughing, her head thrown back, sunlight catching in her dark hair, then back up at Michael, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I look like her." Michael nodded, throat too tight for words. "I'm so sorry," Sophia said, carefully setting the photo down. "I had no idea. I don't know what I thought. That you just didn't like me, I guess." It's not that, Michael said, finally sinking into his armchair. It's just, every time I see you, it's like losing her all over again. For a split second, my brain thinks she's back, and then reality hits, and it's like that first moment of grief all over again. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. I can't imagine how hard that must be, she finally said. If you want, I can try to avoid you too. Make things easier. Michael looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Yes, the resemblance to Rebecca was uncanny, but now that he was allowing himself to see her, he noticed the differences too. Sophia's eyes were a shade darker, her nose slightly more defined. Her hands, folded in her lap, were longer fingered than Rebecca's had been. No, he said, surprising himself. That's not fair to you. This building is your home now. It doesn't feel much like home yet, Sophia admitted. I moved here after my divorce. Fresh start and all that. Michael nodded, understanding all too well the need for new beginnings. Emma thinks you're Rebecca's sister, he said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. She says you have the same smile. Sophia's hand went to her mouth, as if to hide the smile in question. Kids are so perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes, Michael agreed. She also said you brought cookies. Sophia's cheeks flushed. I did. You were in the shower, I think. She was very polite, said you taught her not to let strangers in, but that cookies didn't count as letting me in since she just reached out and took the plate. Despite everything, Michael laughed. It felt rusty, like a door hinge long unused. That sounds like Emma logic. A comfortable silence fell between them, the first moment in Sophia's presence that Michael didn't feel like he was drowning in memories. I should go, Sophia said eventually, standing. Let you get back to work. Michael walked her to the door. As she stepped into the hallway, she turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I remind you of someone you lost. But maybe we could try being neighbors? Actual neighbors who say hello and borrow sugar and stuff? Michael thought of Rebecca's request, her demand, really, that he not shut himself away from the world. For 3 years, he'd been breaking that promise, using Emma as his only connection to life. I'd like that, he said. And maybe Emma would like to help make those pancakes tomorrow, if you're free for lunch? Sophia's smile, her own smile, he realized, not Rebecca's, brightened her face. I'd love that. As he closed the door behind her, Michael felt something shift inside him. Not healing, exactly, he wasn't sure the wound of losing Rebecca would ever fully heal, but perhaps the beginning of learning to live with the scar. 2 months later. Michael stood at the kitchen counter, slicing strawberries for the picnic. Through the window, he could see Emma and Sophia in the small community garden behind their building, heads bent together as Sophia showed Emma how to tell which tomatoes were ripe enough to pick. The sight no longer sent pain shooting through his chest. Instead, there was a gentle warmth, a recognition that life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Sophia wasn't Rebecca. She never would be, and she never tried to be. She was herself, kind, funny, with a passion for gardening and a terrible taste in movies that Michael loved to tease her about. She was becoming a friend, someone who understood the shape of his grief without being consumed by it. As if sensing his gaze, Sophia looked up, shielding her eyes against the sun. When she spotted him in the window, she waved, her smile easy and natural. Michael waved back, then returned to his strawberries. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a unicorn, was a drawing Emma had made. 3 figures stood hand in hand, a tall one labeled Daddy, a small one labeled Me, and a medium-sized one labeled Sophia. Above them, floating in the blue crayon sky, was a 4th figure with wings, labeled Mommy. "She's watching us," Emma had explained when she presented the drawing. "She's making sure we're not sad anymore." Michael had hugged her tightly, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. Later, when he showed the drawing to Sophia, she'd cried, then laughed at herself for crying. "Is this okay?" she'd asked. "Me being in your lives like this? I don't want to. I don't know, intrude on your memories of her. Rebecca would have liked you," Michael had said, surprising himself with how true it felt. "She always said I needed more friends who would call me on my bullshit." Sophia had laughed at that. "Well, you definitely do." Now, as Michael finished preparing the picnic, he realized that for the first time in 3 years, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Not just enduring it for Emma's sake, but actually anticipating it with something like hope. Outside, Emma's laughter floated up to the window, followed by Sophia's deeper chuckle. Michael smiled to himself as he packed the strawberries into a container. Some ghosts, he was learning, weren't meant to be exorcised. They were meant to be honored, their memory kept alive not through isolation and avoidance, but through the courage to keep living, to keep loving, to keep opening the door when someone knocked. Rebecca would have approved. If this story touched your heart and reminded you how powerful a parent's love can be, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional and inspiring stories like this one. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload, and feel free to share this video with someone who believes in love, sacrifice, and second chances.